You're listening to the ADHD Heroes Podcast, a podcast where we speak with the heroes of the ADHD community, namely educators, mental health professionals, and of course, those with ADHD themselves, to gain insights, tools, and most importantly, inspiration towards succeeding and thriving with ADHD. I'm your host, Rabbi Shmuel Reich, a high school Rebbe and an ADHD coach in private practice. Welcome to the show. Hi there. On this week's episode, I interviewed someone named Avi Friedman, who's a time management coach who, in addition to a general clientele, also has expertise in helping recovering addicts with executive functions. We talked about his leaving the world of therapy to pursue a career in coaching, the difference between the structure created by school and life after that, how to approach dreaded tasks, a sense of calm created by knowing when something will be done, different causes of procrastination, his approach toward addressing it, including the value of taking one small step, several case studies of his approach, decision-making, the value of executive function in recovering addicts, and more. Before we dive into the episode, I'd like to tell you about another podcast I listen to called the Chinuch Today Podcast. The host of the Chinuch Today Podcast is former ADHD Heroes Podcast guest, Rabbi Yerachmiel Garfield, Menahel of Yeshiva Torah Emes of Houston, Texas. Rabbi Garfield interviews a wide range of creative thinkers in the world of education who are already implementing their valuable innovations. Recent episodes include a unique anti-bullying program, an outdoor leadership training program, a science curriculum that highlights seeing the hand of Hashem in science, and a lot more. So whether you're a principal looking for new ideas to implement broadly, a classroom educator looking for inspiration, or a caring parent looking for hope through what is coming down the pipeline in the world of education, the Chinuch Today podcast may be for you. So go check it out. And if you'd like to have an ad for your product here on the ADHD Heroes podcast, you can email us at adhdheroespodcast@gmail.com. Now we're back to the regular episode. Enjoy. Avi Friedman, welcome to the ADHD Heroes podcast. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Looking forward. Okay, so let's begin with a little bit about yourself and your background. It was a heads up for everyone. This is a good story. Go for it.
Absolutely. So I have a therapy background, a marriage and family therapist, but I was finding myself very disorganized as I got into adult life, again, with growing a family, going into graduate school. And as much as I was organized in high school, I felt like I was given the structure in high school where you're told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. But you don't have that same skill set when you're going into adult life. And I found myself just struggling with the juggling. There was credit card payments that I forgot to put on auto pay, and calling up the credit card company and asking for them to reimburse the late fee. There was just asking for extensions from my professors constantly because I couldn't keep up with the work. And I felt like it was just like, it's too hard to really keep track of everything. Procrastinating, time management, all those things were really challenging. And I was sitting at my desk one day in my office, and I found this webinar. It said, how to stop drowning in piles and papers. I'm like, oh my gosh, sounds amazing. So I jumped in it. I watched this 1 hour webinar, a free 1 hour webinar, and I was hooked. I bought the program. I didn't even tell my wife. I'm just buying this. It was a whole 8-module course on how to get more organized and building a system. And for the next 2 days, I didn't do one stitch of work. I was just focused on how do I build the system? How do I get organized? And that really led me on my journey to going through learning about time management, procrastination, distractions, all those different elements. And then I realized that if I was able to help myself go through the journey and the struggle, I'd be able to help other people do the same thing. And it's very rewarding. So I started to jump into coaching, and thank God, a couple of years later, it's been really, really rewarding.
Amazing. Great story. You left the whole therapy thing behind. I mean, it helps inform what you do, but
exactly,
the practicing as a therapist per se.
Exactly right. So I'm not working under my therapy hat. I'm working only on the coaching element.
Right. Cool. What was your own, I guess, bringing it back, going back in time now? What was your schooling experience like?
Okay, so I was in yeshiva. I got my undergrad in Talmudic law. I went to graduate school for being a marriage and family therapist. And it really taught me a lot about how to structure sessions, how to read between the lines, to really empathize and validate people. And that was very helpful in my current work, even though it's not in a therapeutic sense. But a lot of the skills that I learned there, as well as the experience I got from being a case manager as a social worker, really helped me with listening to clients, learning to see not just what they're telling me they're struggling with, but to see, again, reading body language and really get a sense of what the challenges are and how it's portraying in their current struggle.
Got it. So it sounds like even though you're not practicing as a therapist, it sounds like you got a lot from the schooling. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. So when you had these realizations about yourself, the time management challenges and the drowning in paper, etc. So we discussed your professional reaction. What was your personal reaction? Did it hit any light bulbs for you? Did it explain anything?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I realized that when you have a structure given to you as a kid in high school, and you have, again, you're not really keeping a calendar. You know exactly when things are due, or when you know that you're going to school, and your teacher will remind you 5 times that when your paper is due. As an adult, you don't have that. You don't know. Again, obviously, people know, okay, the first of the month, your rent is due or your mortgage is due. Those are typical. But oftentimes, a lot of the other elements are just unknowns, like things that don't necessarily have a deadline. When am I doing them? How am I going to get to that project or that task? And I remember the moment that I realized it really hit me at how much I had transformed was once my wife had asked me about, I forgot it was a bill or a car repair invoice. I forgot exactly what it was. And she said, "Oh, did you pay it yet?" I said, "Actually, I have it scheduled for next week, Thursday. I know that the check I was going to get from my employer was about to clear." And then I'm like, you know what, right after that, the day after, it's scheduled to be paid then. And to me, it was very insightful to realize that I know how far in advance something is going to be scheduled for, more than a week in advance. To me, that was an eye opener. I would never imagined being able to feel confident. Like I know exactly what's due, when it's due, and what the next steps are for that.
Wow, well, so that's a really powerful transformation. What were some of the skills you used for yourself at that time? What were the skills you learned?
So again, a lot of the skills are very different types of skills. Again, in terms of procrastination, a lot of the skills I used were, again, Eating the Frog by Brian Tracy, which, for those that don't know, where you are faced with a choice. Someone tells you, okay, you're going to have to eat a live frog today. That's something that you must do. You don't have a choice. And there's really two ways of going about that. One is the classic way, which is pushing it off till 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds. The last thing I'm going to do, completely avoid it until the end, and spend all day thinking about how gross it's going to be when I eat that frog. The other option is where you get it over with as soon as possible. Like, you know, it's going to have to happen today. So I'm going to just swallow that frog, go for it, take the plunge. And the rest of the day will be so much easier knowing that I don't have to eat that frog the rest of the day. And nothing else I do for the remainder of the day is going to be nearly as difficult as eating a live frog. And when we have tasks or projects or difficult conversations in life, oftentimes we view it as, okay, I'm going to avoid this as much as possible because it's going to avoid the inevitable. I'm going to just push it off until the last possible moment, when in reality, all it's doing is it's building up the frustration, building up that concern or the grossness of like, I'm dreading that task, I'm dreading that project, I'm dreading that conversation, and all day that's all we're thinking about. We're thinking about that we still have this thing to do. So for me, that was really powerful in terms of pushing through difficult conversations I had to have, emails I needed to send or respond to. Those types of things were really helpful for pushing through when I didn't feel like doing something, because most of the time we don't feel like doing the hard stuff.
So what was most effective about that for you? Just the paradigm shift?
The paradigm shift, and also just being aware of, okay, what is my frog for today? Going into each day, what is my frog for today? What's that difficult, challenging, annoying task or project I need to do to be able to finish off the day feeling that I accomplished, even if the rest of the day doesn't go according to plan. Even if I don't spend the rest of the day doing everything I need to do, I was able to really end my day off saying that as much as it was a crazy day, I was able to accomplish this. I was able to push through that. Um, that itself is very rewarding. So again, whether it's every day, whether it's every week or month or season, um, those types of conversations or those types of tasks, we oftentimes push off, push off for weeks or months or years even. But if it's simply just focused on what can I do to push forward on this task or project, it makes a tremendous difference.
I said, if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you turned it into a challenge, and then you made the least desirable task into the most desirable task by challenging yourself to like almost get your competitive juices flowing. Am I getting that right?
Exactly, and just get it over with, right? Sometimes we just want to get things over with because just get off our head or get off our mind. It's very similar. I was working with a high school student who we were talking about how he has a 5 minute homework he has to do each night, and the parents reached out to me because he was struggling with actually getting his homework done. And I went through this discussion with him, and I said, "Okay, when you get home, is the fact that you still have homework to do, is that on your mind?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." And he went out to learn at night with a few friends. So when you go out to learn, is this still on your mind that you have this homework to do? He said, "Yeah." Like while you're learning, does it cross your mind at all that you still have this to learn? Yeah. When you come home, it's still on your mind. When you go to sleep, it's still on your mind. When you wake up, it's still on your mind. When you get to school, okay, now I know that's 5 minutes later, 5 minutes until school starts or until my class starts. Now I'm going to do the homework. And we realized it's not just the fact that it's that you're thinking about it, the same 5 minute task throughout the entire evening. It builds up. It's that this is constantly on my mind. It's constantly thinking about it. It's just like I have it to do it. It's still floating through my head as a ruminating thought. And until it's processed or until it's done or until it's scheduled even, it's still going around my head and annoying me the fact that I haven't done it yet. So it's not just the fact that I'm able to accomplish those tasks, but it's also just getting off my head. It's so freeing because when we have that closed loop, when we know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen, we don't need to think about it because we can trust the fact that it's going to happen. The fact that when we close those loops, oftentimes the open loops we have in our mind is because we don't know when it's going to get done or how long it's going to take or what's going to happen. If we can close that loop as soon as possible, what that's going to do is it gets completely off our mind. And an example I tell my clients is, are you nervous about your taxes for the year 2028?
Right.
And no one's concerned about
Not usually, right?
2028.
Right.
Right. I mean, typically it's 3 years from now. And the reason is because we know that when it comes time for it, we're going to address it when it becomes the time. It's not on our mind. We're not thinking about it because it's not relevant right now. So if we have something scheduled, if we have something that we're confident that we know when it's going to get done, or we know that this is something that it's a closed loop, we don't need to, there's no open action or there's no open discussion, then it doesn't cross our minds nearly as much as something that we still have to do. There's still those 100 tasks that we know we have to do. The reason why it's on our mind is because we don't know when we're going to do it or if we're going to do it.
Got it. Okay, interesting. So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you said a bunch of different reasons why procrastination happens. Can we unpack some of them? It sounds like those are all a few different really good reasons why procrastination tends to happen. So can we flesh that out a little bit? What are some of the standard culprits for causes of procrastination?
So a great example for procrastination, the way I view procrastination is there's a client of mine who is a web developer. So he usually did one website at a time, one task at a time, and he was presented with a project for I want you to develop 13 websites. There was a chain of 12 nursing homes, and they wanted not just one site, they wanted 13 sites, one corporate site and 12 individual building sites. And he reached out to me after a week of sitting on this. He's like, I don't understand. This is the biggest deal I've ever gotten in my business. It's a 6-figure deal. I can't understand why I'm holding back from sending a proposal or sending an estimate for this line of work. And I just push it off. I can't get around to doing it. Every time I sit down to do it, I find I'm busy with something else. And we unpacked that and we discovered that the reason why he was procrastinating were really 3 different factors that were coming up. One, obviously, is the fear of rejection, right? When you're sending a proposal to a client, you're hoping that they are going to say, yes, I'm going to sign and agree. But there is a chance that they're going to say no. And it's an uncomfortable feeling. And we realized what he was doing was avoiding sending the proposal because he was avoiding that discomfort, the pain of the rejection. So that was one element that we uncovered.
That's interesting. Do you
And
think that's heightened with ADHD? Meaning because of the heightened sensitivity?
I think there definitely is a piece of that
Right.
ADHD is lends itself to that.
Right.
Um, Again, I think could be possibly also related to individuals with ADHD are used to rejection and growing up and being a child where I believe my son has ADHD, and I know that constantly being told no, stop doing that, control yourself, those kinds of messages, whether they're conscious or subconscious, very lend itself to avoiding those kinds of behaviors. They don't want to be constantly be getting back into that pattern of being rejected time and time again.
Oh God. Okay. That's good insight.
And that was one thing that was holding him back was that fear of rejection. At the same time, so this individual worked with a few freelancers who helped him with different. One does copywriting for his websites, one did graphic design, and he was used to one or two projects at a time. And now this is 13 projects. So he didn't know if he had the capacity to service all 13 websites at the same time. And we discovered this is really a fear of success. Like, let's say they do say yes, right? Let's say they come back to me, your pricing is great, we love your work, let's move ahead. Do I even have the capacity to move forward with this project and to service it in a timeline that is appropriate? Because it may be too much work for the people that I work with, all the different freelancers, they don't have the capacity. Can I find other people that are just as effective, or can I find other people that can pitch in? Um, so that was really holding him back also. Not just the fact that I don't know if they're going to say yes, but even if they do say yes, how am I going to handle building 13 websites simultaneously?
It just sounds like there's a lack of clarity there, and the lack of clarity is always scary.
Right.
Getting that right? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. What do I do? Like, how do I handle a project of this size, of this enormity? And then the third part that was also impacting him was that fear of the unknown, which is, what do I do? He's used to one type of proposal. He's never built other proposals before of larger scales, because not only is it a regular website, there are a lot of different options and variables, right? If you have one corporate website and then 12 individual websites, but you just swap out the name, that's one pricing, that's one scope of work. Or each website has its own design. Is there a general framework and you make some minor nuance tweaks to it? So what exactly does a proposal like that look like? There's so many different options, so many different tiers. It was also overwhelming for him to think about, how do I even start? Where do I even take this? And that also was very challenging for him, because I don't know how to build a proposal like this. So when he was sitting at his desk and trying to move ahead with sending out this proposal for a client, all three of these fears were coming at him and stopping him from doing the work. It was the fear of rejection. Maybe they'll say no. It was the fear of success. Maybe they'll say yes. And the fear of the unknown is, how do I even draft a proposal of this type? I've never done it before.
Right. So in those last two, I'm hearing lack of clarity, but in different ways. One is he knows what to do, but doesn't know how to do it at this new volume, and the other one is not really sure what to do at all, and both
Right.
both spell trouble.
Exactly. Exactly. So when people come to me and they say, okay, I'm struggling with procrastination, I'm not sure why I'm not moving ahead. The first question I ask them is, what's holding you back from taking action? Because you can have two people having the exact same situation, are have an action, whether it's business or personal, whatever it's relating to, and they can't move ahead, they can't move forward with it, but they're not moving forward for different reasons. Like, just another example, I work with people in the addiction space. I know we can get to that later. When one person told me that he's not calling his sponsor, and obviously when you're dealing with substance abuse and addiction recovery, it's incredibly important for you to be calling your sponsor, to be checking in, to getting that support that you need. And he came to me and said, I'm not calling my sponsor. And I said, why not? And he said, because I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I'm going to call this person, dial the number, and then he asks me, he says, hello, what do I respond? What am I even doing? What kind of conversation are we having? So sometimes people are not taking action, not necessarily because they're avoiding, or because they're not being compliant, or they're not doing the right thing, but sometimes it's they're just lost. They're just not sure what the steps are. They're not sure how to navigate the situation. And that pushed him from making the phone call, not because he didn't want to adhere to the program, but because he wanted to to get clarity on what am I saying on this phone call. And phone calls are difficult for him. So what do I even do in that situation?
Are they usually able to articulate that, or do you have to help them understand that if that's what's happening?
So sometimes it's clearer than others. For him specifically, it took some time, a conversation. What's holding you back? Why is it uncomfortable? This conversation. Um, what does it entail? What do you typically talk about? How often have you been calling? And really just trying to take it apart and really analyze the pieces. And for him, I was able to, again, in that session, we were able to unpack what it was that was holding you back from taking that action. And that's why you can have two different people with the exact same situation, the exact same task that they need to do, but they're pushing it off for two completely different reasons.
You mean because they can have different things that they don't know how to do, but they can be different. The things they don't know how to do will be different things.
Exactly.
Got it. So we're at the edge of our seats here. What happened? How'd you get this guy through 13 websites? Or what do you do in general?
Absolutely. So the way I view procrastination is with a three-step process. I actually call it PRO, going from a pro at procrastination to a pro in productivity.
All right.
So the P is the first step, which we just discussed, was preventing. What is holding me back from taking action, right? What is stopping me from moving forward with, I know it's important. I know it's going to help me, whether in my personal life, whether in my professional life, I know it's going to be important for me to do this. Why can't I get myself to do it? And that awareness is key to be able to move past that. The second step is getting back to the homework assignment situation. When I spoke to the high school student about, okay, this 5-minute homework, it's constantly on your mind. You're always thinking about it. What we did is we discussed, okay, let's say this homework was a level 5 discomfort. It's annoying. I know it's on my mind. I know I need to do it, but it's just annoying. I don't really want to do it now. I'll do it later. So that level 5 discomfort was, in his mind, if it's a level 5 discomfort now and it's a level 5 discomfort tomorrow, right before class, why don't I just do it tomorrow, right? If there's no reason not to do it tomorrow, why wouldn't I push it off?
Right.
And that happens with everyone. If the famous quotes like, why do something today when you can do it tomorrow?
Right.
And the answer is that we discussed is because when you're looking at the level 5 discomfort, it's annoying, it's frustrating. What happens when we push it off is it doesn't stay at a level 5 because it's constantly increasing. There are things that as we push it off, we have negative self-talk that comes at us. We have the guilt, we have the shame, we have other people get disappointed, constant nagging, whether it's parents or spouses or coworkers or employers. People are nagging at us and encouraging us, I need to get this done. Whether sometimes there's a financial impact for pushing it off. Sometimes it is a mental load of how much we're holding at one time. And if we push things off, then it just all builds up on us, on our brains. And it doesn't stay at a level 5 discomfort. It really constantly increases as we go through it. So it's either a level 5 now, but if it's a level 10 tomorrow, would I rather a 5? Would I rather a 10? And that awareness is the reframe that I take my clients through. The R is for reframe. Because we assume it's a level 5 now and it's going to be a level 5 tomorrow. So, of course, it makes sense to do it tomorrow. But if by pushing it off, what is the impact that it's having? It's not just necessarily the same level of discomfort because it's actually increasing and getting greater as we push it off. So when I spoke to that web designer, so he had already pushed it off a week by the time we had met. So the amount of discomfort for him was, I don't know how to do this proposal, so I'm getting stuck. I'm not sure how to move forward. It's frustrating, but the financial impact as he pushed it off grew and grew because when you have a prospective business reaching out to you for services, right? They want your business, they want you to help them. The longer you take to get them the information, the worse it looks for you as a business.
Sure.
So that impact was growing, not just in terms of the guilt and the shame for kicking himself for not being able to do it, but also the financial impact for him as well was greatly increasing as he pushed it off.
Right. So you're really showing them, like walking them through the cost benefit analysis, really.
Exactly. So that's really the P is preventing, the R is reframing. And the third step of procrastination, the O, stands for one thing. What's one thing that I can do to move forward? So going back to the client with the cell phone, with the calling a sponsor, what happened for him is that we discussed it's uncomfortable for him to have a discussion with the sponsor because he's not sure what to do. So I asked him, what's one thing you can do to get clarity on what kind of conversation to have with your sponsor? And he told me, you know what? I can speak to a friend of mine who is also in recovery and ask him what he talks to his sponsor about. And that alone was so much easier for him to do than to make a phone call because he wasn't ready for a phone call. Because no matter if he had pushed himself to make a phone call, he'd get stuck the next time. It's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Is this awkward and weird? Or I'm not sure what I'm supposed to talk about. So even if I'm able to do it one time, it's not going to be sustainable because the next time I'm going to get stuck with the exact same challenge. So his one step was to speak to a friend or text a friend. What do I say to my sponsor when I'm having my nightly call? And that was able to get him through that process of now I can figure out what I'm supposed to have the conversation about. Now I feel comfortable, even if it's hard to make that phone call, but at least I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And at least I know what the phone call is supposed to look like. And he was able to do it. And with the web developer, the same thing. We said, okay, how would I get clarity on a proposal? How would I get clarity on how to outline this proposal? And we said, first thing you do is to reach out to your copywriter and see if she has capacity to take on this project. And you can also reach out to your graphic designer and find out what their capacity is. You can also reach out to one or two people that you know and ask them if they have availability, and if they do, what their pricing is. And by taking these small steps and breaking it down to one small action, one thing I can do to move forward, one step at a time, by that evening, he had already sent a proposal to the client to be able to showcase what it would be for those 13 websites.
Oh, awesome. So what I'm hearing is, if I'm understanding correctly, is that there are two steps to the one, in a manner of speaking. There, you break it down so that you have smaller tasks, and then you do one of them, and one thing leads to another, hopefully.
Exactly. And sometimes even if we can't think about all the steps, right? Sometimes it's just an overwhelming project.
Right.
And oftentimes I have clients that come to me again with their business owners and they say, I know I need to hire an employee, or I know I need to increase my locations, and I know I need to take action. I'm not sure where to start. Sometimes that one step is just sit down for a few minutes and brainstorm what it all entails. Or the one step could be speak to a mentor or speak to someone, research for 10 minutes, see what the step is. So what's that one small step that I can take that's going to move it forward? Because once we get into momentum, once we get into taking action, we get into that mode, the momentum is so much easier to follow than if we're stuck and saying, I can't move forward. I just don't know what I can do. It keeps us paralyzed. But if we're in the action mode, we're taking action, we're doing, again, sometimes it's a small step of one quick action, and sometimes it's a small step of time. Set a timer for 5 minutes, set a timer for 10 minutes, whatever that is. I know that if I have a 6-hour project, it's overwhelming. I don't have time. I don't have 6 hours to do it. But if I set a timer, let me just do 10 minutes and we get into that mode. Let me just find out what it entails. That oftentimes is a springboard to allow us to move forward, make progress, and continue to make progress.
So you see, like a short success. Success breeds success, and quick attainable goals help you move forward. If I'm understanding it correctly, I got that right?
100%. Because when people are faced with a project, again, whether it's a school project, a home project, just as another example, a client of mine who was for his home project, he wanted to clean out the garage. Again, that's a very classic case. So where clean out the garage, it's been on my list for years. Like, I know I need to do it. I'm sure there's stuff in there that's important to find, and or I need to bring more stuff in because our house is getting cluttered. We need to clear out space. I mean, it's a classic example of a project that gets pushed off for months or years. And that client of mine, so we were working actually on his business, but he took the same steps and we applied it to his home life as well. And the first step, we realized what was holding him back from forward on the garage project was he wasn't sure which stuff his wife wanted to keep and which stuff she wanted to throw out. I think she had a business previously. She had some equipment and supplies in the garage, and he wasn't sure what she wanted to do with it, so it held him back from taking action. So we broke it down to the small step, which was to text his wife, when's a good time to go to the garage together, and we could look at the stuff in the garage and make decisions about what needs to go and what we need to keep. We didn't need to clear it out, but just to have that conversation to start with was integral for him to being able to move forward and go through that project together.
Excellent. That one small step again.
It's amazing because we underestimate how impactful that small action is. And again, it's the difference between staying stuck and moving forward. Is what's one small step that I can take? What's one thing? And it has an incredible impact on our mood. We feel good about ourselves. We feel like we're making progress. And oftentimes when we take that step, we find that it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. And the reason we were able to do it is because we chunked it down to only 10 minutes or only 5 minutes or just a 2-minute task. Just send them a quick message, write a quick email, schedule a quick meeting. Those are the types of things that are so important to move forward from these 6-hour, 12-hour, 13-hour weeks, months projects, because we just break it down to what's that one step I can do to move forward.
Right, sure. Wow. Do you ever find that the ADHD brain's difficulty feeling motivation is what's getting in the way? Do you see that much?
100%. Because oftentimes the things that we get stuck on, we're not motivated. Right. We're not excited. We're not motivated to do it, because if something is exciting for us, or something we have that thrill, we have that excitement, we're not going to push it off. We might be doing it at the wrong times, right, but we're not going to get stuck and avoiding those types of tasks unless it gets overwhelming. And when it gets overwhelming, that decreases the motivation that we have to actually move forward on that. So if we're relying on the motivation to get us forward, to take action, to make progress, then it's going to be a much harder uphill battle to climb than if we recognize the fact that we're not necessarily going to be motivated to do something. And I know Mel Robbins quotes a lot that motivation is, she writes, motivation is garbage, because if we wait for motivation, we'll get inspired, we'll get that one quick spark, but it doesn't last. It's not going to be long lasting. What we really need to do is to work on building the habits, work on building the habits of breaking things down, small steps, constantly giving ourselves breaks. Because like if I know I'm going to be sitting at the desk for 3 hours, I'm going to be constantly distracted. I'm going to be jumping all over the place. I'm not going to be able to stay focused. But if I do, let's say like a Pomodoro method with 25 minutes and 5 minutes off, or just setting a timer for 10 minutes and seeing how long it goes, or chunking it down by, if we're studying for a test, how many chapters do I have to study in total? Can I just do one thing today? Can I just do one half chapter? One half chapter, take a break. Do another half chapter, take a break. And that's really going to be helpful we might not feel motivated to do that task because it's a challenging task, it's annoying, it's frustrating. But if we know that all we need to do is a quick amount of work, and after that we can take a break, then we're not as tested while we're sitting there, because we know that it's just 10 minutes, it's just a half chapter, it's just one task, that the resistance that we have towards taking that is significantly diminished. Then, just as an example, a college student I was working with, he was struggling with doing an essay, his English essay, and he said the essay will take me about 2-3 hours to do, but I haven't been doing it. And we discussed that who has the ability to sit for 2-3 hours and do it when it's not exciting, we're not motivated to do it. So instead, we decided to break it down by paragraph. And he said, I can't do the intro paragraph first because that typically, the way I was advised by my professors is to do the intro later once I have a good grasp of the essay. I said, great. So let's start with one body paragraph, starting with that, just that alone. And after you finish that, you'll move on to the next step. But the fact we're able to break it down really helped him think, I don't have 2-3 hours, let's say between classes. I don't have 2-3 hours. I have like 20 minutes. But what's something I can do in 20 minutes? When I break it down, I can find something I can do in 20 minutes.
Interesting. So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you're saying even if somebody can't find the motivation, if they can, great. But if they can't, if you break down something small enough, it should be manageable, and that turns into a habit. That itself turns into a habit.
100%.
Excellent. What tend to be bumps in the road when applying this process that you're describing? Meaning you're trying to break something down to smaller tasks. Sometimes it's just going to go perfectly, and that's great. And sometimes it's probably not. Sometimes they're going to be. I'm going to guess there are times where something doesn't quite work, and then you have to tweak it. So what are the things that tend to arise that don't quite work, and what happens then?
Absolutely. So one thing that I found very often is procrastination with making decisions, right? So let's say someone needs to make a decision about sometimes small things, what to have for dinner or something like that, or larger things of, let's say, someone needs to move or apply for a job or make a big personal life decision. And oftentimes we view it as I have this decision to make. I know I need to be making this decision, but I can't get myself to actually, I know I have to pull the trigger, but I can't actually get myself to do it. And what happens is that when we're faced with a decision, many times the reason why we're pushing off a decision is because we don't have all the information in front of us. We don't necessarily know exactly all the elements. We don't have all the details in front of us mapped out in a way where we can view it from a full perspective. We'll have thoughts that come into our mind. We'll think about, just as an example of whether we should we move or should we stay in our neighborhood, right? That's just one example, that a decision people make. And if we don't sit down and really map out all the factors, then we're constantly these thoughts of a pro reason is going to jump into our mind, then a con reason, then a pro, then a con. But you're not going to be able to really sit down and weigh all the factors against each other because we don't have all the information in front of us. Sometimes it requires more research before we do that. And sometimes it's really more we have all the information, but we need to just sit down and look at all the numbers or look at all the pros and cons. Just as another example, a client I was working with, so he told me that because of that, his wife is very happy with me. I said, "Why? What do you mean?" He's like, "Because of the principles that we used in running my business to be able to make decisions, I was able to apply to the house. Because for years, him and his wife have been discussing, you know what, we want to be doing home renovations. There's a couple of projects we want to do. Should we do it? Should we not do it?" And inevitably, it just got pushed off till we'll deal with it another time. We don't have time to think about it, etc. And we realized that he wasn't into decision making phase at that point of all these different home projects because he didn't have an idea of how much all these projects cost, right? If you have someone, you know that you need to redo your flooring, or you know you need to redo parts of the kitchen or the bathroom, or all these different projects that you have on your plate, but you don't know how much it costs. You don't necessarily know if it is a good time to make these adjustments or to make these renovations or not. Again, you might have a ballpark, but sometimes we don't necessarily know because estimates change. So because he had learned that he wasn't up to the decision making phase yet, he had as his steps, his one step was to call a contractor, have them come over to the house and get a quote. Once he got a quote, he was able to decide, him and his wife were able to decide whether it makes sense to do this thing or that thing. But all these projects they had put off for years was purely because they had never taken that step of gathering the information before the actual decision making. They had just decided, you know, like, there's too much to think about. I don't know if now's a good time, so let's just push off to the side. But because we're able to differentiate between, you're not even up to the decision making phase yet. All you're able to do is to gather the information. And once you have that information, then you can make a decision. And that differentiation was critical for him to be able to move forward on home projects because he didn't have that pressure of making a decision. All he needed to do was get the information, and then him and his wife can actually sit down and make a decision.
Interesting. So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you're saying that when there's a decision-making process, so sometimes it's not even about a lack of clarity, it's about being one step before that, where you don't even have the necessary information to even get started, and that has to be the step that you begin with.
100%. Because how, if I asked you if you should take a family trip in the summer, right? The summer's coming up, should you do a family trip? If I don't know what the budget is, if I don't know what the dates are, how can I make a decision about a family trip? Because I don't have the factors needed to be able to make that decision.
Right.
Once I get all the information, then I can make a proper decision. I still might want to avoid making that decision because there is resistance for one reason or other, which again gets into procrastination. But oftentimes the resistance comes from there's too many unknowns and therefore I can't make a decision. When in reality, if we can break it down into two different phases, one is the gathering information phase and one is the decision phase. If I am focused on making a decision, but I don't have all the information, I have a lot of resistance to even thinking about it, right? I don't even want to think about it because there's so many unknowns. I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to shift it for another time. If instead, what I could say is, I'm not up to the decision yet. When I have all the information, then we can make a decision. But in the meantime, let me just take some steps to get information. Let's say a family trip. Let's figure out what a budget would be. Let's figure out what location makes sense. Are we flying? Are we driving? Is it something local? What are the dates are available? Let's say for the family, things like that. Once we have all those factors, then we can feel confident in actually making the decision.
Interesting. And those things, once you know those are things you need to do, so then you can break them down accordingly.
100%. Right. Yeah. And one of my clients also, one of the things on his to-do list was to book a ticket for his son for yeshiva. I think he was coming back from Israel, and his task was to book him a return ticket to go back. And it's been on his list for weeks. And we realized that your job is not to book a ticket. Your job is to ask your son which airport he prefers, which is closer to his yeshiva, because that it makes a big difference. Also, which date does your son have a preference? You can browse on an airline site for hours and hours and trying to find the right flights. But if you don't know which airport, and if you don't know which date, and if you don't know if you like evening or morning, you're just browsing for no reason. That's not going to help you make that decision. So that's why I would avoid going on the airline sites until I even have a clarity on what dates make sense or which time of day makes sense or which airport. Once you get that information, it can always be changed. If you say, you know what, he prefers morning, so let's try morning. But if, night is half the price, let's do that. That's always a possibility. But there's no benefit of browsing without knowing the specific details. And very similarly, if someone's trying to find furniture for their house, trying to buy a bookshelf online, or trying to buy a desk or a couch, if you don't know the dimensions of the room, if you don't know how much space it's going to take up, you can browse on these websites and these furniture sites for hours and hours. But if you don't know what size you need, it's an exercise in futility. It's a waste of time because you're not able to get a good sense of purchasing that furniture until you actually go and measure the space. So that first step really could be take out a tape measure and measure how much space you have.
Right. So again, that small step of gathering information is what really gets the ball rolling, if I understand it correctly.
Excellent.
Absolutely. So before we swing over to talk about your work with addictions, is there a resource or two you'd recommend on the subject of procrastination?
100%. So I actually have a course on skillnotch.com on overcoming procrastination. It's a very short course, about 6 modules. It's very bite-sized and easy to do. So if someone wants to do that I recommend. There's also a great book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, which discusses that Eat the Frog concept and another 20 or so procrastination busters, as well as feel free someone can reach out to me and share what their challenge is. I'd be happy to help them move past that procrastination.
Excellent. Okay. So swinging it over to your specialty with addictions, how would you describe your work with recovering addicts?
Absolutely. So what I find is when people are going through recovery, and again, they're going through the mental health component, they're going through the addiction, the substance abuse, or whatever the addiction is in. When they come out of recovery, they have pretty much hit rock bottom. They have impacted their life in tremendous ways, and there's a lot on their plate. Also, in addition, a large amount of people that are struggling with addiction, with impulsivity, do have ADHD. And for them to realize how challenging it is to acclimate back into the real world, going into daily hygiene and executive functioning of those sorts, whether it is in terms of applying for a job or going to school. We know that those are incredible necessities for someone that's going through addiction and in recovery, to be able to have that as an anchor, to be able to keep them from relapsing, giving them a structure, giving them that grounding to be able to stay strong. And there are a few treatment centers that I partner with where they want to focus on the mental health. They're working on the substance abuse, they're working on the mental health, but I help really in the executive functioning to be able to help them, give them a structure in their day to day. Again, whether that includes calling their sponsor or getting involved in sponsor work. Like one of my clients, one of my first clients, who was struggling with doing one of his 12-step work. He was struggling with doing a journal for his sponsor. He said it's about an hour's worth of work, and he's pushing it off for a few weeks. And we're able to break it down into, okay, set a timer, 10 minutes, take a break. Set a timer, 10 minutes, take another break. That made it able for him to get through that assignment. And after that, we worked on many other different areas. And now he's actually in graduate school in a local college, because he was able to break down those larger chunks into smaller chunks. And we worked on even just folding laundry, right? A lot of times I work with people, room cleanliness, which is a big factor as well. So sometimes we envision laundry takes forever. Again, we took a timer, 10 minutes, see what you can do in 10 minutes. And then also translating that into how long is the average song? About 3 to 4 minutes. So folding your laundry really takes 3 songs. It's a 3-song routine.
3-song process.
So breaking that down into that step really allowed them to move forward. And it really applies to all different areas. When you're applying to college or in college as a student, there are a lot of areas where, again, we have big assignments and trying to make sure that we're studying for our finals and balancing current classwork, and really being able to break things down in that capacity has been tremendously helpful for the individuals I work with.
Interesting. What are some of the unique challenges that you find this population has?
So I was actually working with an individual, and one of the challenges is applying for a job, right? Because obviously when someone's currently in recovery, so I was working with someone that was in an outpatient program, and part of their role was to get a job while they're participating in that program. So they had a limited amount of hours they could work. So they're looking for something that was more manual labor, things like that. One of the individuals who told me that he was struggling with finding a job, and we unpacked that. The reason why he was struggling with finding a job is because he wasn't sure when he would go into the store and present himself. I'm here to get a job. I want to inquire if there's anything available. What do you say when someone asks you, what are you doing here? Or do you live around here? Or is that only amount of hours you can do? Can you do a full day? Or why can't you do a full time? And those questions were getting him very stuck in moving forward with getting a job, because it's a very uncomfortable conversation and he didn't know how to respond to those types of inquiries. So we discussed that, and we realized that there are other people that are in the program that have gotten jobs before and have been in those situations. So his one step was to speak to colleagues or speak to mentors in the group and ask them, what do you say in these situations? And be able to draft a message for yourself, that what would you say, or what would you want to say when someone approaches you about why you're around the area, what you're looking for, and why you're looking for that kind of job. So that was really key. The first step was to even just ask your friends or ask your colleagues what I could say. And then the second step was to just practice in front of a mirror, or practice in front of a friend, role playing. What do I say in these situations when people ask difficult questions? And then after that, trying to take steps towards going into stores and inquiring about open positions.
Interesting. That's a challenge I wouldn't even have thought of. The fact that they have, explaining to do sometimes. Are there other unique challenges that you find that this population has relevant to the executive functioning?
So I would say that also in terms of keeping up with their sponsor is also something that's more unique. And again, sometimes Sometimes there's resistance to calling. Again, we discussed earlier the resistance because it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
And other times it's also because when you're calling your sponsor, you're not sure. It's the type of task that really can be done at any time, right? If it's a 10-minute phone call or a 5-minute phone call or a 30-minute phone call, there's really no specific time of day that you need to be doing it per se. And therefore, it's a type of task that gets pushed off constantly throughout the day. So there's nothing telling me that 9 a.m. is a better time to call my sponsor than 10 p.m. Obviously, coordinating with the sponsor and finding out what their schedule is critical. But if it's that type of task, which is not time sensitive, then what's pushing me to do it now? And those are the types of tasks that come up in everyday life, right? It's not specific for people with recovery, but this is a type of task that people in recovery do struggle with because this phone call could be done at any time. So therefore, since any time is a time to do it, any time is also a time not to do it. I'll do it later. I'll get to it. I'll call on the way home. I'll figure it out later. I'll wing it.
Right. Any time can be no time, as a wise guy once said. Right.
Yeah. So again, trying to figure out how to structure those kinds of tasks. Again, whether that means coordinating in the morning, that one quick action could be just sending a text in the morning, texting your sponsor, what time works for you after 5 p.m. Or it could be if there's a specific task that you do every day, right? Whether it's going to shul or going home for supper or going out with friends. If you do it on a consistent basis, you can attach that task to the activity that you have, the batch tasking.
Yeah.
So every day on the way home from work or the way home from school, that can be your time to coordinate that the task you need to do of calling your sponsor is designated at that time. It gives it an anchor that you can attach it to.
Excellent. Okay. Anything else you wanted to say about this particular population?
Again, I think that the biggest challenge that people in recovery have is there's so much on their plate and there's so much they need to take care of, right? They're going through recovery. They're dealing with the addiction. They're dealing with mental health oftentimes. And now they have to restart their life from scratch, and it's very overwhelming. And that's why it's so critical for them to give themselves a structure, to be able to give themselves to knowing what they're doing throughout the day, giving them some sort of activities, or whether it's productive activities, relaxation, meditation, whatever it is for them. And the challenge becomes when they don't have that support. And I work in tandem with the therapist. So actually, the individuals I work with in recovery, I actually CC my summary email after every session. I give a full email of what we discussed, what the challenges were, what their commitments are for the week, and I include their treatment team. Again, whether that's the therapist, or psychiatrist, or parent, or head of the program, I include them on that, so that way the mental health therapist can address the mental health elements and not get stuck on dealing with their daily schedule. Like the therapists I speak to, they tell me, I don't want to deal with schedules. I don't want to deal with what time he's waking up, what time he's going to sleep. That's not what I want to do. I want to focus on the addiction, or I want to focus on the anxiety or the depression, whatever it is. And that's where I say, that's awesome. I'll work on the executive functioning piece. I'll work on routines and structure and calendars and procrastination, those things. And that way that will allow you, the therapist, to focus on the most important thing for you, which is the mental health or the addiction piece. So having that group together is incredibly helpful.
Right. Well, so if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like people in this situation have much more to juggle than most other people do. They're trying to get their life together. They're trying to address their addiction. They're trying to address their mental health, maybe their physical health, and they're ill-equipped to do that. So you're giving them the skills to juggle all the things they need to juggle, which are difficult in their own right, if I'm understanding correctly.
Right. Exactly. Like one of my clients who he's a consultant for schools in the charter school arena. So he's trying to build out a schedule, but realizing that by doing so, 2 of his afternoons were scheduled with mental health. He also had to go to 2 AA meetings during the week. He also calling a sponsor. All those things that get thrown into a schedule. It's not just building a schedule that makes sense for you, but there's all these other pieces which are critical for recovery, critical for maintaining your sobriety, but it takes a time. It takes time. It takes a toll on your schedule. And again, it's a very positive thing to do. At the same time, when you're trying to balance all these different appointments and all these different meetings that you have on top of a typical schedule, it adds a different element to the challenge.
Right. So it's almost like you're going from, and your other clientele, you're helping them function better. With this clientele, you're helping them function. Period. Am I getting that right?
100%. I've had a few of my clients who were in the recovery space. They told me they wouldn't have been able to make it through recovery without our work together. And the reason is because as much as they were getting help with mental health, when they're left to their own devices in terms of not feeling confident that they can move forward, they can make progress, and they get stuck on making decisions, they get stuck on taking action, they get stuck on their daily functioning, whatever capacity, it's demoralizing for them to feel like, again, I'm working very hard. It's hard work we're doing, and going through recovery is extremely taxing. It's very emotionally hard. It's very physically hard. The withdrawal is real. Like it's a very challenging time. And if on top of that, I don't have a structure to my day, and I just sitting at home or sitting in my program without having a set structure and not knowing how to motivate myself, as you mentioned, we can't always motivate ourselves to do stuff. And there are days that are hard, but if we can't build those habits and build those routines, then we sit and ruminate on feeling that guilt or the shame that we feel. And it leads us to relapsing in different patterns that we've been trying to avoid the whole time.
All right. Wow. Okay, so starting to wrap it up, what is a message of hope you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
What I'd love to share is, again, procrastination, time management, distractions. These are all big topics. And typically we come to these kinds of conversations, we hear, okay, procrastination. I know I'm procrastinating something. I know that I can't get my time together. And we all have that to some capacity. Again, I tell people that if I was more super organized, of being organized with my time, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. Because if I can't relate to the struggle, if I can't relate to the challenge, then I wouldn't be able to help clients. I would be doing them a disservice by being in the role I am. And instead of looking for perfection, one of my favorite quotes by President Truman is, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
Oh, excellent.
Taking action imperfectly is better than perfect inaction. We're not focused on perfection. We're not focused on really making sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed. We're making sure, what is one thing that I can do? What are steps that I can take? Whether it's going to be perfect, whether it's going to be the ideal, whether it's just, don't focus on the perfection. Focus on the small steps. What's one thing I can do? Don't look at the bigger picture per se. If the bigger picture is overwhelming, focus on the nitty gritty. What's one step that I can do? What's one element of my life that I can change? And when I build schedules with my clients, I don't say, okay, let's look at Sunday through Saturday. We have 24 hours in each day. How are we giving each time a block? Start with one day a week, one morning a week, or one afternoon a week, or one evening a week. Start with that, build a routine, build a habit, and then build on that. Once you have that established, small steps, you continue, again, making 1% progress, a little bit 1% better each day. Because if we try to take on too many things at once, it's going to be challenging and it's not going to be lasting.
Amazing. The power of the small step. Awesome. Okay, anything else you wanted to mention today?
Honestly, my biggest message in general is the more we can break things down into small steps, again, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? How do you take on these projects? Really just small steps. What's one thing that I can do, whether it's a small amount of time I can take, whether it's a small action I could take, whether it's having a quick conversation with a friend. And if someone's not sure about what's the next action, I think that's also, I'd like to share also, if we're not sure what the next action is, one of the tools that I use is called the $1 million question, is if someone offered me $1 million to figure out what the next step is, not to spend on it, If someone offered you $1 million, that who would you speak to? Where would you look? What would you do? If someone gave you $1 million to figure out what that next step is, what would it be? You don't necessarily know. There could be a lot of steps. There could be a lot of things. But if it's just one thing I can do, is there one person I could speak to? Is there one action I could take? Is there one timer I could set for 5 minutes? What would the next step be? And that often is a tremendous eye-opener for how we view these large, overwhelming projects.
Amazing. So it sounds like that's another way to zero in on that small step, like another angle to get there.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, amazing. So people can find me on LinkedIn. That's my main channel, Avi Friedman. I'm there, the time management coach, as well as my website, managedminds.co, managedminds.co. Those are really the two places that people can find. And if you have a specific question, you're not sure about how to navigate a situation, reach out, schedule a free call. Love to just walk you through that process and see how I can be of help.
Okay, awesome. Avi Friedman, thanks so much for joining us today. This was fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the ADHD Heroes podcast. For questions about the podcast, you can email us at adhdheroespodcast@gmail.com. Also, for sponsorships or to share your story, your ADHD story, you can also email us at the same place, adhdheroespodcast@gmail.com. To be in touch with me about ADHD coaching, writing, or speaking engagements, you can email me at rsreichadhdcoach@gmail.com. Be sure to check out my website, rsreich.com, adhdcoach.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn, or you can check out my blog on nefesh.org. Check out my blog there under my name. Important disclaimer: podcasts are great, but they do not take the place of mental health help or medical help. So if you need help with mental health or need a doctor, be sure to be in contact with some of them. Please, if you like this show, please rate, review, and share with a friend. That's how these things get out there. Thank you again for listening, and thank you to our producers at Pretty Easy Podcasts.